Oh, whistle, and I will come to you. That was what I found on the paper slipped under my door. I got one of these papers once a week. No amount of police calling, investigation or CCTV could stop it. It shifted days once a month. This was the second to last Friday I was going to get one before 2020. I decided enough was enough. I had a plan. Or a vague idea. I jumped through the hoops of buying a gun, and I waited. Thursday came, as it always does, and I stayed awake. For 6 months I had tolerated some creep standing in the dark one night a week and leaving a note. I wanted to see what it was about. I lived in a high-rise apartment building. There was no plausible way this person should have remained uncaught. So I waited by my door all night until at 10:03 p.m. a note flew from under my door. The same instant I flung open my door, it was pitch black, which was strange. There was always lights on in the hallway, unless the power was off. It wasn't, and I grabbed a flashlight and peered into the darkness. The wall the same as always, but there was more dust in the air. It sounded like there was a chorus of hushed whispers behind me. But when I turned around, the sounds abruptly stopped. I cautiously entered my home again, unnerved. The lights shouldn't be out, and the power isn't out in my apartment. I decided to grab my gun and see what was out there. I did so, and went to close my door when I heard whisper "Hey" behind me. I spun around, but nothing was there. I shuddered and called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" There was no reply. I was about to go back into my apartment when I heard footsteps around the corner. I flicked the flashlight up and saw an unkempt guy running towards me. "Please wait, don't close the door," he whispered harshly. I left it open, but stuck the gun barrel out. He immediately raised his hands. The poor guy looked like he was about to cry as I asked, "Are you the person who leaves the notes?" He looked at me and asked, "What notes?" I sighed and lowered the gun. I got ready to close the door as the guy said, "Please let me in." I left my room one night to find this place. "You're the first person I've seen in months." I looked at him oddly. This guy had to be nuts. It was just the apartment building. There were plenty of explanations for why the lights were out. I was about to shoo the weird guy away when I heard humming. The guy's eyes widened and he said, "Turn out your lights." Before turning and running away. Turned out the lights and prepared to go to bed. The humming came and went, and I fell asleep, dissatisfied. I awoke to another harsh whisper, "Hey." I was too scared to open my eyes, but the deep voice carried on, "I know you're awake. You shouldn't have opened your door." I opened my eyes, and nothing was there. I looked out to see that despite it being an overcast day, the city was completely still. I opened my door to find it the same pitch black it was last night. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what will happen if I whistle. I think time passes differently wherever I am. To me it's been about 12 hours since my last post, but no sleep has a 24-hour posting rule. After realizing I was trapped, I did a basic rundown. I still had power, and internet. I have no phone service however. I don't think any SOS calls will help me. I have about 2 weeks worth of food, and my water is still running. As for all of you who commented, thank you, but no, I am not going to whistle. The notes that say that have been there for months, it's unnerving. Whatever left them clearly came from here, seeing how when I opened the door as I got a note I was suddenly transported here. I still had my gun, and my bat. I had no clue what to do. So I went out, with my flashlight, thick leather jacket, button gun. I left the door to my apartment cracked. Call it paranoia, but I figured I should take the guy's advice. I was afraid if I closed the door it would stay closed. I turned out the main light and left a paper that would glow under a black light to find my way back. I decided to go the way that guy had. Maybe I could catch up to him and we could formulate a way out. Maybe I was fucking bonkers, and none of this was real. I followed the same path he had, at least as far as I could. There was an unexpected fork in the hall. It wasn't there back before I opened the door. I flicked my flashlight to blacklight, and saw a trail of footprints. I decided to follow them. The footprints looked like they belonged to a set of fancy shoes. I reached a wider room and smelled something rancid. I turned my blacklight off and turned my normal light on to see a corpse. It was terrible. The body could hardly pass for a human. All the fingers were partially degloved, skin hanging off the knuckles. The arms were fully skinned. The worst part was that he had been scalped. His face lay discarded on the ground. It took me some time to realize it was the man from outside my room. After a few minutes of vomiting I turned to leave. As I turned I heard a loud whoosh behind me. I turned again to see that the dead-end room was suddenly a large cavern. There was a cacophony of whistling. Behind me, below me, any possible direction I could look otherworldly whistling came from. I turned again and ran. Thankfully behind me was still apartment building. As I ran I turned the blacklight on. The prints were still on the ground and I followed them. I slowed down and let myself catch my breath when I heard footsteps rushing the floor above me, like someone was running. I looked up and turned my blacklight up. Then I heard muffled humming, and saw outlines of the same shoe prints appearing on the ceiling. I held my breath until the humming passed. I took a short reprieve in my apartment. Wonky time here meant more Reddit posts, so I enjoyed that. After lunch I got up and decided to risk another foray out into the halls. I guess it still hadn't fully dawned on me what had happened. I was afraid that if I really accepted that I was in some weird alternate reality I would probably have a panic attack, and I knew panic was the end of survival. I left my apartment and noticed immediately something was off. There was a light at the end of the hall I hadn't gone down. I turned to the right and started walking. I took a moment as I walked to sweep the floors with my blacklight. Those footprints led to some wacky shit. Of course the layout seemed to change often too, but I couldn't predict that. I walked closer to the light and found myself in a large greenhouse. There was ash all over the roof, and the plants looked dead. I couldn't help but wonder what the hell happened here. I looked at the plants, they looked like they had just died. There were no fruits or vegetables, just me, the dead plants and stale dusty air. I set my flashlight down and started walking through the aisles of dead plants. I heard something on four legs sniffing about the ground. I raised my bat, preparing to defend myself. It lunged from behind, and clamped onto my shoulder. My thick leather jacket was the only thing that saved me. I struggled to beat the thing off of my back. When I got it off I shot it with my gun. It was a very pale, hairless rat from what I could tell. I turned and went to grab my things when I noticed a skeleton on the wall. I walked over to it with morbid curiosity. I couldn't help but think it was ominous. There was a bag by it that I didn't notice before. I picked it up, and saw that there was a sword in it. Forgive the childish behavior, but a sword is badass, and I needed the new weaponry. Chances were my bat wouldn't hold up. I slung its bag over my shoulder and prepared to leave when I saw another rat thing charging at me. I managed to block the rat's bite with my bat. I still fell down. I struggled as it tried to push the bat down and bite at my neck. I managed to shove the rat over and started smacking it. Satisfied it was dead I looked to where the flashlight was. It looked strange, like another place was trying to replace the hall I came down. I ran and grabbed the light, then darted into the hall. The greenhouse area was replaced by the original hall before my eyes. I was very unnerved by the earth literally shifting in front of me. I decided to ignore it and turned on my blacklight to check for footprints. Instead of footprints the entire hallway lit up. I was about to turn around when I heard footsteps behind me. I ran instead. As I ran and turned the light out I heard an uncanny voice say hey. It didn't sound human. As I got further I started to hear whistling. I turned around and saw nothing. Then I entered my apartment. I did a thorough check to make sure nothing was in here with me. There wasn't, and the whistling stopped. All I found was another note that read, "Whistle for me." I crumpled it up. I think there are some ways this place is different. The wildlife here is strange. I think the air is different, it smells wrong and is always dusty. The worst bit is that the layout of the building is always shifting. I'm pretty sure the only reason I was able to come back here was that I left an outside object where it would have shifted. I don't know what to do, but I'll update you guys soon. I'm in a hotel in Minnesota. I was going to California for an easy breezy break and I decided to stop here. A college student couldn't drive forever after all. When a storm picked I drove into Minnie's Inn. As I grabbed my bag and walked in the wind whistled and howled. I could hardly see more than 5 feet in front of me. It almost sounded like I could hear footsteps, but I ignored it and walked in. It was comfortably warm, and this part of the inn clearly served as a bar or a lounge, with several people sitting around the room. I walked up to the counter and asked the tired woman behind it, "Do you have any rooms open?" She looked up from a finished crossword and said, $50, I've only got room 13. It's got a draft, but it's better than freezing out there. I pulled out my wallet and paid, and she handed me the key. I walked to my room and set my stuff down. I looked out the window, its curtains were open. I could have sworn in the dark whiplash of the snow I could see a figure. I ignored it, but feeling unnerved and cold I decided going out to the lounge would warm me up. I sat down, and another hotel worker walked to me and asked, "Anything I can get you? We do serve food." "I'll take the cheapest meal and drink you've got," I said. He nodded and walked off. The chair I had chosen was comfortable, and closest to the hall. A few others sat nearby, silently. Until an old man said, "I don't like the sound of this storm. Sounds like nature's crying out." A middle-aged man said, Probably that she is. Have you seen how the weather is the last few years has gotten? Every year it gets worse. An older woman piped in and said, well, it's not like we're helping the environment. The worker returned with a bowl of some noodles and a sad cheap whiskey. I took both and paid him the $10 I owed. Then the power cut out. I continued eating, and everyone else, sparing the old man, gasped. The old man seemed unfazed by it, like he didn't see it. I was too tired to do anything but eat. The woman behind the counter muttered, shit, and went about making sure all the curtains were drawn. The other fellow who worked went behind the counter and began pulling out a stack of papers. The woman walked back and said, if you're out here, it's probably better if you stay out here. The man walked around passing out pamphlets. The woman kept talking, things tend to get pretty weird when the power goes out here. We're passing out a list of rules right now. The middle-aged woman asked, what do you mean weird? The hotel worker, whose name tag read Eve, said, we hardly know ourselves. I didn't get one, like the two had forgotten me. The old man asked, can someone read this to me? I'm blind. Everyone else was facing the fire as Eve pulled two strange masks and handed one to the other worker. I got up when I saw the knives. Sure thing, Eve said, before she cut the blind man's throat. I turned and ran as they cut the others up. I was about to go into my room when I realized that they would predict that. Fortunately, all of the doors were open but mine. I ducked in room number 9 and saw that another person lay dead, throat slit. I ignored the metallic smell and ducked into the closet. I can hear them now, searching. Turns out they didn't forget me after all. I'm finishing up typing this right now, but I can hear them calling out. The rules won't help you, sweetie, nothing will. Eve calls out every so often. It's like they're afraid though. They're searching quite frantically. As I am typing this last paragraph on my week date, I can hear the footsteps entering room number 9, and approaching the close.